I cannot do research without seeing the power inequality,
Mm.
all of that. I just cannot do research like that. When I started doing more evaluation, more program evaluation here in Chicago, truly working with the communities and the nonprofits, I felt more at ease and more like I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, because it was at that moment when you're closer to the community that you have to put those ideas into practice. That it's not only talking about in school, in the classroom, how culturally responsive you are or you want to be, or how things affect everyone or not affect whatever. It's actually seeing the faces of people and being involved in their development of these programs and seeing the dynamics with the community, with the nonprofits, with the evaluator, and being a responsive evaluator for me. And also, I think there's a push through the evaluation field for now years of being responsive, of being not that evaluator that comes into a community and just starts saying what it needs to be done and how things should be, but rather be the facilitator of many of these processes that need to be optimized, I guess, a good word. But that experience also, just in another way, more than activism, all that, it truly opened my eye to the way that me as a worker, like my actual work, can also be based on equity, diversity, inclusion, based on theories that are sensible, that are responsive to the communities. So right now, the work that I do involves several things, but of course, I do a lot of data collection and data analysis and all of that, but always through the eyes of being culturally responsive. My job, more than being just a researcher, was truly to get people thinking about the little things that they're not taking into account. One of the things that cultural responsive evaluation teaches is to be responsive through the whole, okay, since the beginning of planning the evaluation through dissemination, everything has to involve the community and has to involve the people who are being affected by it. My evaluation practice became more intentional when it came to being responsive to the community. It was like, now I'm not only thinking about, I'm gonna do a cool topic on a cool idea, a radical idea, and I'll call it a day. No, I don't think like that anymore. I don't feel like I can do research like that anymore. I really need to think about, okay, if I'm going to do an evaluation of this program that is a small program that is working with 30, 50 people, that they're reaching the community and there is a specific thing. How do I serve them the best with the knowledge that I have and that I have cultivated through the years? And how do I bring myself as the tool as well, seeing that I have the privilege to have all this knowledge and that I can do a lot of things with it and I don't have to be imposing anyone anything as well. Yeah, it really speaks to the whole experience of evaluation. Like if I go and do some focus groups, for example, I feel like need to know who I'm speaking with. I need to know the context. I need to understand who the people are, especially because I do a lot of work with Spanish speaking communities. And people sometimes forget that there are 13 Latin American countries. They
Mm.
all speak it differently and they all way of saying things and their own.
Mhm.
And I'm coming from the Caribbean. And if people don't know, with Spanish, Caribbean Spanish is pretty much like Jamaican English. We have a history that has created I myself call it beautiful way of speaking, but it's different than, for example, Mexican Spanish. And I have to be really aware of that all the time when I'm working with communities, Latino communities that are not Puerto Rican, for example.
Yeah.
And even if I'm not directly related to the community, I still need to do my work and be really conscious of the context, the history of the place, of the people, and be open to do. I feel like I always say this, and some people look at me weird, but be open to do some extra work of getting to know the people
Yes.
outside the research. I'm doing a research here in Maywood, where I work, and I love the idea of doing research in my own town, the town that I live. I'm new to this place, to this little town, so I'm trying to figure out how do I get involved not only with this specific project, which I will get to know a lot of people, but how do I get the sense of the community all about? And I felt I need to get out there. You need to get to talk to people. So I went to, oh, let's go to the day that they are gardening, oh, like putting like new flowers and flower beds all over the town. It was like a whole activity from the municipal to trying to do different stuff like that. And a sense of just speaking to, I remember this lady that's been here since the 90s. She's born and raised in Maywood, and she gave me such a interesting view and context of the development of the town that I would have gotten from just working at research. So I always feel like if you want to be a really good researcher, you have to be willing to get out there as well.
Get outside and meet the people. This is Social Justice Origin Stories. I'm your host, Rolando Tompkins Jones. Social Justice Origin Stories is a storytelling project that highlights personal stories and defining moments that have inspired individuals and organizations to labor for equity and social justice. Through truth-telling, the honest sharing of their experiences, storytellers teach us about themselves, enabling us to learn about ourselves and our world through their stories. By reconnecting with pivotal moments of activation in their lives, they invite us to do the same. At Social Justice Origin Stories, we believe that there's power in storytelling and lived experience is experience. There's room enough for all of us to do this work. There are many ways to contribute, and our contributions don't need to be the same. We can enter and remain engaged in the work using the gifts that are special to us while supporting others and using theirs. We have the capacity to grow and change for the better when exposed to new information and experiences. We believe in our inherent worth and capabilities, and we possess the power to inspire and create change within ourselves and others. We can transcend the confines of the status quo to imagine and design more equitable and humanizing systems. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Now, today we're joined by Emely Medina-Rodríguez. Oh, yeah, we go back many years now at this point. But thank you for answering the call to be here and sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Orlando, for opening this space for me and for everyone listening. I think there's a lot to be gained when we share our stories. And just a little bit about myself. Right now, I call myself an evaluator. I'm a researcher, a social researcher, and program evaluator that is focused on equity, justice, and culturally responsive evaluation, which entails looking at power structures and putting the concerns and the needs of the people and the community first in any evaluation that I'm doing with the group. I have been close to the community for many years. I think the first thing that I needed to say was that I am from Puerto Rico, and I grew up over there and I studied all my schooling in a public school in Puerto Rico. Went on to the public university of Puerto Rico, and that was best times of my life for sure. I think there was a lot to gain from that experience, and I have a lot to share with you all about that time and how it speaks to how I see the world now and what is my practice for sure.
When it comes to thinking about those moments that activated you and set you on a path for pursuing social justice, one of those moments that you mentioned was the teacher strike in 2013.
First, I want to share that I come from a family of teachers. So my grandmother was a teacher, my mom and my dad, my uncles, my great grand uncles, they're all involved in education in Puerto Rico. Somehow my dad was like mechanical engineering, art. My mom is an English teacher. My grandma, she taught everyone in Rincon, my hometown. So I was always involved in education and learning. And that was a lot of what I've done through life is because of that start in my
Mm.
family. And truly, a lot had to happen for me to get into understanding what was happening with the teachers at that time. And it became clear to me at that point that part of my purpose that I chose for myself in life was to truly be in solidarity with other groups. And I understood it so clearly. Of course, here in Chicago and in the many parts of the US, teachers are very much I don't know how to say it. Just they're not having the best time, and in Puerto Rico, definitely education has been infinite place of content and also just overall policies against the working class in Puerto Rico. At that time, they were imposing a few new laws around taxation in Puerto Rico. But the teacher specifically, what was happening at that time was that the retirement fund of the teachers was being privatized. And the government wanted it to get it into Wall Street, basically, with
Yeah.
the interest and all of that. And the teachers fought for that because they were the ones who created that fund for themselves. And it was like part of it was an actual fight, something that they won through fighting for better conditions overall. So at that time, I was really starting to get involved in the socialist movement in Puerto Rico, especially through the youth. I was working at the University of Puerto Rico. I was already pretty close to them through research and through just professors that we knew and like-minded people. But at the same time, I wasn't truly involved in activism. I was just like, yeah, I'll go somewhere if you need me, but I wasn't organizing anything or thinking too much about it. But at that time, I started to study on my own and with the group that I was part of, that was Juventud, oh my God, Juventud Socialista, Socialist Youth. I don't remember the name right now. Then we were just literally finding time in the weekends, during the day, in the afternoons, to read stuff that you don't get to read in academia. And a lot of the things that I read about was the history of the political movements in Puerto Rico, which was eye opening because in school you're not truly getting in any depth about that in history, in classes or anything like that. So it was very much a learning experience, and that got me to be closer to the teacher movement as well. And a lot of the people that I knew that were part of the socialist movement in Puerto Rico were also part of the teachers movement. So we are related in that sense. So on that day, I remember the whole experience truly captured the best and the worst part of being part of activism, because it was the beauty of having people come together and fight, but at the same time it was a defeat for them. It wasn't they didn't won. I remember people just crying, really frustrated, and that really put a lot of perspective in my mind about what we're doing and what we're fighting against, because it wasn't straightforward. It wasn't just, oh, we're gonna win, woo, because we know we're gonna win. It was like, let's fight to see if we can do something.
Yeah.
But that experience was like building up from many other experiences before that, especially when I was in college. I was close to people and close to the student strike that happened around 2009, 2010. And that was truly the best time in terms of learning about how to engage the community and how much power people have when they come together. And we were thousands of students getting together. In Puerto Rico, the university has 11 campuses, so it's a large system of universities around the whole island. And the largest university has, right now it should be less, but it was like 20,000 people or something like that. I was in the west side, so my school was like around 17,000 people or something like this. So it's like the second largest. And we closed the university like collectively and paralyzed the whole system for months. And it was beautiful in terms of we saw how, for example, for the first time, we were seeing how social media was a tool for us to get people places. And I was more as a bystander at that time. I was full on in favor of the strike, but at that time I wasn't involved in the socialist movement. I was more centered in going to Michigan to get my degrees and all that. But when I came back to Puerto Rico after I studied in Michigan, my master's, it was clear to me that was the time that I needed, and I had the time and the means and the privilege truly to sit down and understand many things about colonialism and about my own life and situation. And it also came with not only about socialism and Puerto Rico's independence movement and all that, it was also feminism and a lot of new ideas. So it was like a little revolution in my life at that time that happened. And I was like a newborn,
Yeah.
seeing the world for the first time in this many different perspectives that I had. And surely I think my understanding of the world right now has a lot to do with the history that I live in Puerto Rico and
Mhm.
how I was involved in that and how I really tried to bring some of the stuff that I knew to Chicago as well. And I have been really close to many groups now in Chicago, but when I came to Chicago 2015, I started with a group of other Puerto Ricans from the island, group that was called Chicago Boricua Resistance. Boricua is a term for Puerto Ricans as well.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, we were trying to bring the socialist perspective to the youth and Puerto Rican youth here in Chicago, which it has a whole history of its own of the independence movement here in Chicago is amazing. The Young Lords were here. It's a huge history, but it was also needing a refresh of ideas as well and new faces. And I think we tap into a lot of people that were looking for a new way of doing anti-colonialist, decolonizing ideas and how to help also with the movements in Puerto Rico. Stuff
Mhm.
like, for example, clearly with Hurricane Maria in 2017 that gave us a lot to protest about. It was truly amazing seeing how solidarity with other groups that we have, like people from diaspora, the Philippine diaspora, people from the Palestine diaspora, other just Americans, other teachers that were part of the teachers union here in Chicago, and just like developing like a network of people. We were doing that for at least 6 years or something like that.
Okay.
The pandemic was something that held
Yeah.
everything, but until that time, we were really involved with everything that was happening in the island. We were having the ousting the governor in 2019, just before the pandemic. And that was a whole amazing experience that I was able to experience in the island and here in Chicago, and it was really cool.
Backing up just a little bit, you described it as you were like a newborn, and some of the realizations that you were coming to. If you can think back and remember, what were some of those things for you that you were realizing maybe for the first time at that point, or just understanding a little bit better that created that experience of feeling like, oh yeah, I'm like a newborn, and I'm sure one to also share those perspectives with other people too.
I can tell you, like, for example, when I was in college, I was a poli-sci, political science major, so it was all about politics and all that, and it was fun. But I never encountered stuff in a way that made sense to my personal life. So
Hmm.
more than reading any source of specific topic, it was more this idea that this stuff affected directly my life and how I go about it. When, for example, I remember simple stuff. I had read the Communist Manifesto in school 3 or 4 times. Couldn't understand it for my life. And it wasn't until I sat down with a group of socialist youth that I was able to not only understand it, but make the connections to what was happening in our daily lives. So it was truly defining. And one of those topics was very much the history of the independence movement in Puerto Rico, something that I didn't know. The independence movement is an old movement in Puerto Rico since before the US for sure. Understanding how we got to where we are and how people are thinking about, especially people thinking about the independence of Puerto Rico in different ways, truly got me thinking, why do we want independence? How is this independence going to come about? And how is it going to look like after we get independence? That was a lot of the questioning that I was doing at that time. And another important aspect was like ideas about feminism in terms of understanding the role of the power inequalities that were there, and truly that affected so much how I saw myself and how I saw others. Because up to that point, I feel like I wasn't truly, I didn't have access to that information until that time. And it was like truly all on board once I got it. We got, yeah, this is actually what's happening. That's happened all my life. I completely understand. Um, so I think those two ideas were the most salient at that time for sure.
And those earlier experiences you had, how do those things actually influence and shape the ways that you work with folks now, the ways that you lead now, ways you go about your work as a researcher too?
It's interesting because my development as a researcher is parallel to all what was happening over in my personal life, political life. I started my research career working with students from public housing projects in Puerto Rico. Um, that captivated me, not only the way that we were using data to the things that we were seeing in the community, but also get to create, because at the end we created a whole research. I was like the research assistant, so I wasn't like truly the PI or anything like that. It was a learning experience for me in terms of learning research, but also getting to understand new perspectives at that time that I would about even the poor, the people from public housing projects. I wasn't coming from a housing project. I grew up in a barrio, almost like a rural place. And it was part of my environment, public housing projects. So once, and they in Puerto Rico, I was reading this just the other day, like yesterday, I think. The history of public housing projects is really interesting because they started in the 80s and with like a housing crisis that was in Puerto Rico. A lot of people were living in arrabales, which is basically a piece of like wetlands that people used to live in, made up houses and stuff like that. And with this idea, I think it came like from Reagan or something like that. But in Puerto Rico, it started more in this poor people are criminals, and we need to there's in Puerto Rico, it was like really targeting public housing projects because there was like drug dealing there, and there was trafficking and all this. So you had this military geared up police officers breaking communities of hundreds and hundreds of people. Yeah, one of the biggest housing projects in Puerto Rico has 25,000 people. This is a huge place. It's a huge community. We saw that growing up. I saw that in the news all the time. You know that you don't want to get into the housing projects. You know that you don't want to be involved with people from the housing projects. That was changed completely upside down once I actually got to know the students from the housing projects and the parents and the teachers and everyone that I got to work with and to be a mentor to or be whatever research we needed to do with them. And yeah, it like humanized them and humanized me in terms of getting to know them. And people in Puerto Rico were having different experiences, that we were not all coming from the same place, and that and this is due not because of personal characteristics, but rather the systemic issues that are happening, that are keeping people in poverty, that are keeping people in dangerous spaces. But truly, through that experience that I spent years in the University of Puerto Rico working with that, and I came back and worked as an evaluator later on in that program and another college access program in Puerto Rico. And I was seeing the same things, the same ideas, people bringing up ideas such as Puerto Rico, Mayagüez, the one that I studied, has always been proud of the quality of their students because it's one of I think it's like the best, in the rankings, is the best university in Puerto Rico. The thing is that people are really proud of going to that university because you have to be the best and you have to be the best student and all that. And most people study engineering in that university. Engineering. I was caught up. I didn't study engineering, but I was caught up in this idea that I almost deserved being there. And yeah, this is logical that I'm gonna be this. But when I started to see how people were struggling, really good students, really smart people, struggling to get a good education, good enough to get into the university, which would truly, it was easy for me to get to the university. My college board test was really good. I didn't have any problem getting into the program that I wanted. Even got like those like early enrollment and all that. But when I saw a lot of people just truly wanting that and wanting to move forward and have a degree, and it was just the simple things because people that I got to know at that time were saying stuff like, I don't want to be rich. I just want a house. I just want to have security. I just want stability. People are thinking people want to even get out of the housing projects, but in reality, that's the community for them. It's not as easy as just, oh, goodbye, I'm done, when your family's there, with your friends and all that. But it shook my perspective for sure on that early time, and that inspired me to do a lot of the research that I did on policy in Puerto Rico. First, I looked at policies that were reproducing colonialism in Puerto Rico through education. That it sparked even more questions about how were things working in Puerto Rico. I also did a couple of studies about teachers in public housing projects and how the No Child Left Behind law affects how they see their students.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And the other one that I was doing at that time was to understand the aspirations of students from public housing projects for like college aspirations or just overall, and how that happened, how that process comes about. And that really got me to the next level, which was doing my master's at University of Michigan. And that was like another whole world. Yeah, it was first the cultural shock of, whoa, I'm not in Kansas anymore.
Yeah.
Michigan was really not Puerto Rico, so it was really different. But the thing that I enjoyed the most was starting to learn not only that different cultures have different ways of doing stuff and all that good stuff that most people enjoy, but also just the underpinning of the struggles of people, of especially one of the things that I really got an education on was racial equity. Like
Yeah.
from my experience in Puerto Rico, I'm coming from a privileged standpoint. In Puerto Rico, I'm considered on the lighter side of the spectrum that comes with a lot of privilege when it comes to colorism in Puerto Rico, which works really different. And truly, I wasn't aware of any of it because of my own experiences, and also my lack of like experience with it, but also just overall in Puerto Rico, the racial ideology is really different, and a lot of it is made invisible by not talking about it and not paying attention to it. Something that happens a lot is like someone starts crying out loud that this is happening. People are thinking, no, you're just making this up, even though
Mm.
this is for real. A lot of that, I came with that baggage to Michigan, and I left that baggage in Michigan and came to Puerto Rico with a whole new sense of, and I did my papers on what's the deal with race in Puerto Rico because I was curious enough want to understand, and I found out there's a lot of people thinking about this in Puerto Rico and the diaspora. It was like, yeah, like a light bulb. I was woken up to seeing Puerto Rico through a new light when I came back. It was like, yeah, this is happening. And a lot of other things, especially when it comes things about class, especially because I think that's the salient thing in Puerto Rico is class. I had got so many resources from that time that I implemented through my research and evaluation practice in Puerto Rico, but it was also kind of like I wanted to know more about it and get more info. It was interesting enough to that the activism part and the going to study part and being a researcher and working as an administrator was like a weird mix that allowed me to navigate different worlds truly because I was doing research with students and doing participatory action research with students from public housing projects and all that. But in my afternoons, I was going to the student movement and going to the assemblies and going to different activities and learning a lot about different readings and people and theories and stuff like that. So it like came about together and it speaks really. I don't remember a time that I didn't work towards my research didn't work towards equity and justice because my mentors were not only savvy but also really involved in the movements in different ways. And that really impacted me through research. So, like my PI at the time was my mentor through college. And she, at that time, the university didn't have a grad school. Like my program didn't have a grad school. And we were really put to do a bunch of stuff before we were even grad students. So I got like the best training there. And these are people that are they have so much, I guess, consciousness, but also the will to do the actions that are needed. I had professors My mentor, for example, was really involved in the fight against the ROTC because a whole other thing. But basically, student movement and many other groups have always been in against having the ROTC in the universities in Puerto Rico of the colonial status. And just overall, it's a sense that there's only space at the university for some people if they get into the military. There's so many spaces in the university and resources that they're using that were not being used for other things at the universities. I wasn't part of that was before I became a student, but that spoke to the type of professors that I had. And the best thing that I had done ever is become a political science student in the colony, because my professors were pretty much most socialist independentists, people who were part of different groups, part of different movements, and they brought all of those ideas to our classroom. And we were exposed really to a lot of new ideas, and it was like a joke that you ended up when you graduated, you ended up being independentist because of the teachers that you had there. So it was truly a lot of us that I knew were encountering this stuff for the first time. So it was truly new. But yeah, right now it speaks to wow, it speaks to so much of what I do now and how I see things being done.
One thing I just wanted to highlight, and from what I'm hearing too, and in some of your earlier experiences, it communicated to me the power of the ways that we're socialized and a lot of the messaging we get. It could be about ourselves. It could also be about folks who are different from us in some ways. And then you connected it. I'm thinking about the storytelling around the housing projects. You're telling the stories that you were hearing about it. You don't want to be like these folks. They're this, they're that. And then you described it like, but wait a minute. But then I started doing research. I started working with these folks that I was taught and I heard messages about in a particular way. And that personal experience broke up a lot of that messaging. It's wait a minute, their actual lived experience is something totally different than what I'm hearing. And I just wanted to just highlight the power of that, and then in your sharing how it connected to that too. Like having these personal experiences with people can sometimes contradict a lot of what, especially when it comes to marginalization, like can contradict a lot of the things that we hear. There's the message that like, here's how these folks are, and it's important that all of us agree that's how they are, because in a way that messaging explains certain disparities and how they exist. And so y'all just, it's these folks, they don't care about themselves in a particular way. They don't care about education or whatever the things are. And it's important that everybody understands that. And those are the messages that are pushed out. But then you talked about, no, I got experience. I became a researcher and I started working with folks in the projects, and that broke up all of that messaging. Wait a minute.
I still have many of the friends that I made because at the end of the day, I was like a second year, and the students that we were recruiting to, because it was an action based research as well. So a lot of the students were also involved in the research, and I still am friends with people, and it's incredible to see how far many of them has come from having to have like tutoring courses through high school to get to the university, and now they're like clinical psychologists or
Yeah.
engineers or stuff like that. So for me it was the most inspiring thing, to see them and to grow with them truly, because I feel as the program was growing, I was growing as well with them, and we were bouncing ideas of each other, me and other people coming from different backgrounds, and having these conversations thanks to my mentor, really, that facilitated a lot of these conversations around my experiences. I have had even been in that position of discussing inequalities between even like among students from public housing projects. So it was a lot of talking, but
Mhm.
but a lot of discussions. I feel like that has happened in different moments that it's just not, it's not linear. You truly,
Yeah.
you learn something at some point when things are like happening, and later on you learn other stuff. I got to Loyola University to do my PhD. I was a little disappointed.
How so now?
I don't know what I was expecting, but I truly think I came to the university to search for more of what I wanted. I was like, yeah, let's do more theory and let's do more readings and let's explore deeper these topics that I'm like working with since Puerto Rico. It wasn't it because the university most are not at that moment in their lives. And then when they come to the PhD, they don't have the same experience that I had. So a
Yeah.
lot of the time was a lot of conversations around topics that I was like, I want to know more, but this is like a cap here. And it was always a disappointment to me because it was like, I cannot talk about anything. Like, there's no ears that can, because you have to explain so much before getting to your point. And a lot of people asked me back then, like, how do you know this stuff? I'm like, well, I was in Puerto Rico doing a lot of activism and a lot of readings. It's not new, and nothing that I saw at the university was new. I think the thing that I learned the most was more like methods and all that.
Okay.
But at the same time, it was like, I remember stuff like I had a class was really good, but at the same time, it was traditional in the readings that they gave us and like the way they were thinking about higher education because my PhD is in higher education administration and policy. Mm, and done with the class. And I remember going to the library and taking out like 5 books of the same topic, higher education. I would just wanted to know more, but I try to look at authors that had more radical ideas of how to change education as a whole. And
Mhm.
I brought it to class and I was like, this is all my books. And I am now ready to talk about this properly after reading all of this because clearly this class is not giving me what I needed.
Yeah.
The professor didn't like me at all, but it was a really interesting time to know where I was standing and what I wanted it to do because I feel like at the time I was like too focused on this let's change stuff, let's do activism, let's do which I needed to channel through Chicago Political Resistance for sure that I did, but they can never take away from me the fact that I cannot do research without seeing the power inequality,
Mm.
all of that. I just cannot do research like that.
And you were describing earlier on, you had a few different experiences happening simultaneously that were starting to shape things. You did the researching, but then also when you were done with that, you would then go and you'd be organizing. So you're having those experiences, and then you come to your PhD program, and it sounds like in some ways it's like, all right, yeah, let's talk about the methods and let's talk about research. But naming and being aware of the power dynamics that exist in that and oppression and privilege and that it sounds like to me you're saying I'm aware of these things, but I was in a program where it's, yeah, we'll teach you how to do research, but that teaching didn't necessarily involve understanding these power dynamics and in
Yeah,
the ways that you've seen them, right?
yeah, even when there was like a class called social impact or something really cute or like radical. Seemed like there was to get to any good conversation, you had to go through all of the explaining and getting everyone up to speed before actually going into action for sure. That wasn't even, we couldn't get there. The never did I change my own perspective about my role at the university that I saw. I'm just gonna take what is good and it's gonna make me develop. For
Mhm.
example, those research methods classes were truly that kept me at the my
Yeah.
program because I was focused on trying to understand how to do research, but also how to do research in a way that was responsive to the communities, that took into account everything that was racial issues, gender and class issues. And it wasn't until my dissertation that I finally, from years of collecting ideas, trying to put something together, I don't know if I was successful or not, but at least I did it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's been really a lot of that through Loyola. And after that, when I started doing more evaluation, more program evaluation here in Chicago, truly working with the communities and the nonprofits, I felt more at ease and more like I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, because it was at that moment when you're closer to the community that you have to put those ideas into practice. That it's not only talking about in school, in the classroom, how culturally responsive you are and all you want to be, or how things affect everyone or not affect whatever. It's actually seeing the faces of people and being involved in their development of these programs and seeing the dynamics with the community, with the nonprofits, with the evaluator, and being a responsive evaluator for me. That was like another moment in my life that I was like around my second and third year in my PhD, and I was chosen for a fellowship in American Evaluation Association to do the JEDI program, which is grad internship equity something.
Mm-hmm.
They trained us to do cultural responsive evaluation.
Okay.
A whole bunch of stuff. Like we did a whole 10 months internship. I did it in the MacArthur Foundation, and all the people were in different places. And we had to do like a whole research. We did 2 classes. It was a whole bunch of things. But that time, and this is another mentor that I feel really close to since that time, I can say Dr. Rodney Hobson has been one of those people that I look for assistance, for honest feedback, for anything that is related to evaluation. But even it becomes like when you're a Jedi, he was the director of the program. And once you enter that program, you really feel like you're amongst family, friends, people
Mm.
want to help you. So that opened up a lot of my networks that I work with now is through the Jedi program, and feeling like I belong to heal has really changed the way that I empower myself to do the work that I do, because I feel appreciated by the field. I feel like I can do stuff here. And also, I think there's a push through the evaluation field for now years of being responsive, of being not that evaluator that comes into a community and just starts saying what it needs to be done and how things should do, so how things should be, but rather be the facilitator of many of these processes that need to be optimized, I guess, a good word. But that experience also, just in another way, more than activism, all that, it truly opened my eye to the way that me as a worker, like my actual work, can also be based on equity, diversity, inclusion, based on theories that are sensible, that are responsive to the communities. So right now, the work that I do involves several things, but of course, I do a lot of data collection and data analysis and all of that, but always through the eyes of being culturally responsive. For example, one of my projects is with the Rhode Island Department of Human Services. They are looking at some grant that they did for providers of childcare providers. And my job there, more than being just a researcher, was truly to get people thinking about the little things that they're not taking into account. For example, knowing that most of the providers were Latino people, Latino women specifically, and not only Latino women, that they're actually coming from the Dominican diaspora to Rhode Island, and knowing what happened and what years happened and the history, and centering that history, centering that experience that they had through the years in Rhode Island and through the work that they do as childcare providers, speaks to what we do in the research. Like I remember, for example, we needed to change stuff in the survey and how to present it stuff in the survey, which is a big part of, for example, Latinos not choosing a race in the survey. Sometimes has to do with stuff like what comes first in the survey. Do you put that you're Latino? You put that you're black or whatever other that they add?
Hmm.
Or you put that you're Puerto Rican first. Those conversations, a lot of the time, I find myself having these conversations with different teams and different stuff throughout the evaluation process. Because one of the things that cultural responsive evaluation teaches is to be responsive through the whole, okay, since the beginning of planning the evaluation through dissemination, everything has to involve the community and has to involve the people who are being affected by it. In that way, looking for ways to be more responsive. And with merit success, not all spaces are spaces that are open to that. Uh, Many places are pretty much traditional in that sense. And there's other places that are in the contrary. They want to do everything cool, equity centered, and it depends a lot on the funder and all of that. But plenty of opportunity for me to work on different topics on evaluation and being responsive to the community that I serve through evaluation.
I have a few follow-up questions for you. Okay. So one of them, I'm thinking back when you were describing your experience in PhD and you talked about going to the library, getting the books, and then coming back and like, all right, here's the thing. One of the things I was getting from that was like, and you can let me know if I'm correct or not in that analysis. One of the things I was getting from that is okay, so the sense of I'm not necessarily getting everything I need here in this moment in terms of looking at evaluation and research in a way that acknowledges these power dynamics. So then in some ways taking it upon myself to go get some additional knowledge, and then I try to bring that knowledge back and say, all right, look, here we go. And it sounded like I do remember you mentioning like it sounded like that one professor didn't like you or whatever, and I wondered, was a part of that because of okay, I'm trying to bring some things back into the class and it directly challenged this. Let's just look at research in this like business as usual, here's the way you do it, that didn't attend to that. So I was wondering, was a part of that from your experience, was a part of that not liking in response to, but wait a minute, I'm just trying to elevate that there's some other dynamics that are present here that we aren't talking about that are also important for us to understand as researchers. Some ways the power structure when we challenge those things is okay, here this person comes with. I was wondering, was that a
Really, I think that challenge to what the professor was putting forward was not welcome. But I can accept now that my attitude towards learning and towards even what I was doing in my PhD was maybe not the most productive in terms of,
okay?
not being able to level with people, not pushing them to think other stuff that maybe they're when they won't understand until they understand more basic stuff. So
Hmm.
me a lot of during that time, a lot of me trying to balance out my activist part
Yeah.
and action oriented personality with learning that academia is also a space to explore ideas and to expand. And obviously, and everyone has their own journey and their own process and developments. At some point after that class and after seeing that the dynamic wasn't the best, I took another stand. It was like more, let's do more Paulo Freire style of like discussions.
Hmm.
And I stepped back a lot during my PhD in terms of not just bringing stuff up that were not just being discussed at the moment, just because, that's a logic next step. Actually being part of the process of other people learning and experiencing these ideas, because it was like I was working with people that For example, I was trying to explain something about cisgender people, and I was just like going at it. Oh yeah, cisgender. Someone was like, "What is a cisgender person?" So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
just stop everything that we're doing and let's go back to the base. But I think that that was a and my husband always tells me this: practice will always be more of a teacher to you than any class and any theory. So a lot of it was a lot of my learning through activism and through being militant with different groups that I got to that point that I was so like eager to bring all this knowledge to the plane, bring all this knowledge and but I had great professors at Loyola truly that acknowledged that I had that need and was like, you know what, this is perfect. Let's do this. They channel my
Yeah.
towards evaluation, for example, or towards because evaluation is a really practical way of doing research and doing social sciences, really. And I was just like in love with the idea that I could do so much, not so much with doing research other than just writing papers and writing, because that was something that eventually I was done with. I used to think I was going to be a professor.
Mm-hmm.
But after a while, I was like, "Nah, let's do
It's not
some,"
what you want.
especially because I just don't see myself working on one or two topics for the rest of my life, doing academic research and papers and all that. Not that
Mm-hmm.
I won't do papers because my job also includes doing all of that, but it's a whole different. It's the private sector, so
Yeah.
it's a different way of doing things, more collective. As like it's not that isolating. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you're not writing alone, you're writing with your team and stuff like that. And the thing that brought me to evaluation, I was doing evaluation in different forms before getting to Loyola, but it wasn't until I took a class with a great professor that is now a really good friend of mine that truly I saw myself like, yeah, I can use this. I can truly make something out of this because it's not only that I'm gonna write the paper, is that I'm making a change within your that people are gonna be using the data, that people are gonna be using the resources that we create out of the data and that we're
Mm-hmm.
helping. Like it felt like I was helping.
Yeah.
And that speaks to that all the experiences that I had before that truly speaks not inform a lot of what how I go into communities because one of the things that I had to learn, especially coming to Chicago, that obviously this is obvious now, but different communities have different cultures. So it's not the same, not even the same going into the Mexican community here in Chicago, which is bigger than other Latino communities in Chicago. And you have to know the idiosyncrasies and the culture and how people are thinking and saying things and those little things to really communicate and be of help rather than bring your biases and you really have to think about and be really genuine with what your privilege is and how people are seeing you in these spaces. Because I remember, for example, being pretty lost working with West Side School here in Chicago, the West Side of Chicago is really in dire need of resources and support. And the whole culture for me was new and at the same time was a learning experience. I didn't have a bad experience or anything like that. But just seeing the way that I come across, even if I'm thinking I'm acting normal, the
Mm-hmm.
way I come across with people is really important to me. That for me, people need to feel like I'm on their side, that I'm with them. I'm not telling them what to do, especially because that community specifically was mostly, it was a Black community, but the whole culture for me was pretty new overall. Stuff, little stuff like knowing that you can't, that usually people call themselves like Miss Emily, Miss, they use the more formal way of calling people little stuff like that, but overall, like how to treat children in that community, how people see children.
Mhm.
All of that truly speaks to all those experiences speaks to how I go about doing my research now. And I still
Mhm.
truly still learning a lot about different communities and how to work with them. But it's fascinating to get to do it and really appreciate the opportunity to be exposed to different cultures and to different groups and to be a resource for them. To be, if evaluation is one of those technical stuff that nobody knows what they're doing, truly it's like a magical thing that you don't know, that nobody knows what it is. But when you truly are doing evaluation with groups and you see the results of how things are changing because of the evaluation, or how things are being organized thanks to X or Y resource that you gave them or constructed with them, it's really, yeah, it feels really good. It feels like you are contributing to the world. Although my work is literally in this computer doing a lot of, data and stuff like that. But when I get to go and speak to people is when I feel the closest to my purpose. Like,
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. You had described, okay, so you were in Loyola, you did your PhD program, and then you got into this JEDI program and had a really great experience with it. I wanted to ask a couple things in regards to that too. One, what was different about that experience that led, I know you mentioned your mentor and that too, but what was different about that experience for you that made it memorable and great for you? And then also, to the degrees that it helped inform how you show up as a researcher, what are some, so it's a two-part question. One, what was so great about that experience, or what was it about that experience that made it transformative for you? And then also, in the ways that it influenced your approach as a researcher, but then also what practices, and you've been talking about some of them, you've been naming some things, but what practices do you think are essential for really, really equitable, inclusive relationships with community as a researcher? Like, what was transformative about that experience and the way that it informed and shaped your analysis as a researcher? And then just thinking about responsive research, co-responsive research, as you've been talking about it, what are some practices that you think are really important for folks to take in that space to support those relationships and being equitable and not extractive and we're telling you what to do or what we think you need? What are some of the elements and some of the practices that you think are important for that too?
yeah, and through the Jedi experience, I think not only it was a mix of getting the training with truly some of the most amazing evaluators in the US. And it was great seeing people who are like on top of their game, but also their careers have been around this topic of like democracy and participatory research and evaluation and responsiveness and all sorts of this idea of having power be part of the equation, the mentorship for sure, but also I was in a foundation doing my internship, so it was weird in terms of not knowing what even to do. I had never worked in a foundation before. So it was really just trying to understand the whole thing. But the Jedi program really was one of those places that you felt like you could count on, like the people there are truly open to helping you. And I never receive a no. And I truly felt like that was the first time that I started to think that I belong to a group of like a field, like a workers that are similar to what I do. So they're doing something similar. So it was that sense of belonging to the American Evaluation Association and knowing there was a space for me and I can do a career with the support of other people that has come before me that have opened so many doors and have truly be the vanguard. I guess that's a good word to just take out the obstacles that were on the road before. Because, for example, the mentor that I was talking about, this person had to be really vocal at some point with we need more responsiveness in evaluation. We need to open spaces for Black and Latinos in evaluation. Thanks to those people that I saw, that I've been seeing through the years, that have this purpose that they feel like this is something that will change the field of evaluation. This is the same feeling that I have now as an evaluator. This is something that we can develop as we go. We can make it better. We can make it ours. And there's many opportunities to do that. And I feel like there's more opportunities in research and evaluation than even in academia, because you can really explore different aspects of research in different evaluations. That time that speaks to my experience is knowing that knowing that I have a place that I can grow, that I can bring my radical ideas without filter, and people will, at least if they're not gonna push back, at least they're gonna be like, you're brave, you can say it here. This is a safe space," which is really incredible, that I feel like AA has created a truly a space for evaluators that is open to new ideas. To If you do your due diligence, you can do a lot of things. And from that time, research, my evaluation practice became more intentional when it came to being responsive to the community. It was like, now I'm not only thinking about, I'm gonna do a cool topic on a cool idea, a radical idea, and I'll call it a day. No, I don't think like that anymore. I don't feel like I can do research like that anymore. I really need to think about, okay, if I'm going to do an evaluation of this program, that is a small program that is working with 30, 50 people, that they're reaching the community, and there is a specific thing. How do I serve them the best with the knowledge that I have cultivated through the years? And how do I bring myself as the tool as well, seeing that I have the privilege to have all this knowledge, and that I can do a lot of things with it, and I don't have to be imposing anyone anything as well. Yeah, it really speaks to the whole experience of evaluation. Like, if I go and do some focus groups, for example, I feel like need to know who I'm speaking with. I need to know the context. I need to understand who the people are, especially because I do a lot of work with Spanish speaking communities. And people sometimes forget that there are 13 Latin American countries. They
Mm,
all speak it differently, and they all way of saying things and their own.
mhm.
And I'm coming from the Caribbean. And if people don't know, with Spanish, Caribbean Spanish is pretty much like Jamaican English. We have a history that has created I myself call it beautiful way of speaking, but it's different than, for example, Mexican Spanish. And I have to be really aware of that all the time when I'm working with communities, Latino communities that are not Puerto Rican, for example.
Yeah.
And even if I'm not directly related to the community, I still need to do my work and be really conscious of the context, the history of the place, of the people, and be open to do. I feel like I always say this, and some people look at me weird, but be open to do some extra work of getting to know the people
Yes.
outside the research. I'm doing a research here in Maywood, where I work, and I love the idea of doing research in my own town, in the town that I live. I'm new to this place, to this little town, so I'm trying to figure out, how do I get involved not only with this specific project, which I will get to know a lot of people, but how do I get the sense of the community all about? And I felt I need to get out there. You need to get to talk to people. So I went to, oh, let's go to the day that they are gardening. Oh, like putting like new flowers and flower beds all over town. It was like a whole activity from the municipal to trying to do different stuff like that. And a sense of just speaking to, I remember this lady that's been here since the 90s. She's born and raised in Maywood, and she gave me such a interesting view and context of the development of the town that I would have gotten from just working at research. So I always feel like if you want to be a really good researcher, you have to be willing to get out there as well, even if no one is paying you to do that. And just because you have the, I don't know if compromise is the right word, but the true calling to help to work with with people.
Get outside and meet the people. I love how you talked about getting to know folks outside of the research too, because I think that enhances your perspective. So thank you for sharing that and your experiences with doing that too. You mentioned mentors throughout our time and our talk together who have been a part of your journey. Is there anything that you would say to them or about them? The mentors that you mentioned, or the folks that you've named, if they were to come across this recording, or you might come across them or talk to them again later in your experience and just in life, what would you say to them or about them that speaks to just appreciation for their influence and their impact on your life and journey? What would you say to them or about them?
I think first I'll say something like, I am standing on the shoulders of giants. I feel like I'm where I am right now because of the people who believed that I could do it, and because they saw something that I sometimes didn't see in myself, that saw that I had not only the capacity to do it, but also the heart to work towards equality and be more present about that. If I have to say something to them, it's definitely an amazing feeling of appreciation for precisely that, for giving me that empowerment. Although they knew that I was developing and learning, they also saw, the potential of a young researcher, a young evaluator that can truly make changes in the world. And I think I also want to say thank you for the times that I was put up straight, the nudge towards the right road, I guess, the right path. Because I needed that so much, and I feel like that really provided me with a much needed sense of just humility, empathy, understanding, and not only seeing the world through your privileges, but seeing the world through other people's eyes. Especially to my mentor in college, she had a great influence on everything that I did moving forward. Thank you for the patience. And I don't want to be a professor without those professors. Surely my academic life would have been really different. And now as a evaluator, I think my mentors that are helping me now get the footing of, now you're a career evaluator, so what to do next, how to grow in this world, how to do the things that you want to do. Those people are amazing, and they inspire me so much to do the same for others. And people that know me know that I'm always open for coffee, I'm always open to chat, I'm always open to do whatever needs to be done for you to feel like you're receiving the help that you need, the support that you need. Mm, I've had many students that I've mentored as well that I feel as much appreciation for them as well. As a win in that sense that you get to have this amazing relationships, mentorship. But yeah, overall, a big, amazing thank you. And yeah, I just hope I keep them in my life because these people have never gone, really.
What do you hope listeners will learn or take away from your story, and what actions would you encourage them to take?
I think part of the story that I want to tell is the story of a person that has had many experiences that are being influenced by different ideas, but also contexts that I've lived within. That when I'm passionate about something, what what's coming out is coming out of the place of the struggles that I have seen, the victories and the defeat, and the development that I have seen people do, and the development that I have done personally. And then overall, truly, you have to know the whole story of a person to get them, to get why they do stuff. And I feel like for me, it's the same thing. Sometimes I'm like, I'm doing this even though it doesn't make any sense to other people because I feel like this is the most important thing based on what I know of what my knowledge. And that was, for example, my dissertation was on student mothers, Latina student mothers in college, and my mom was a student mother, so felt like it was a topic that I wanted, but at the same time, people were like, "Why are you studying student mothers? This is, such a waste. You can do other cooler topics." I'm like, "No, I don't want to do any other topic. I want to
This
do
one's what I want.
a topic that I feel is gonna do the most for the people." And I know, knowing that my mom was a student mother and they are usually super busy, super a lot of responsibilities. Not a lot of grad students, not and they shouldn't be obligated to study themselves or study just because they're student mothers. They should be studying student mothers, kind of thing. So for me, it was like, no, I want to bring my experience as the daughter of a student mother, but also have that help the ones that I feel like my help is gonna go the farther. I don't know if I would say that word. But yeah, and yeah, I think people should see me as someone that is really puts I feel like I want to be I don't want to put more on me, but truly feel like I'm using all of my resources towards equity and justice. I think that's the best way of saying it. My personal life revolves around activism and being close to the community, but my life as a worker and as an evaluator also revolves around looking for equity and looking to do the goodest good that you can in this world. And I think that's me. That's how I feel like that's my purpose, just trying to bring some perspective and work towards equality. No, doesn't matter what it comes about, really.
Mhm. And what would you encourage listeners to do, if anything, just at the top of your mind? Like, what would you encourage them to do, given some of the things that you've shared?
Yeah, no, take actions 100% of the time. Do not stay put. Take action towards what you need to do. Get with other people. You see a need, you see a gap, you see something that needs to use. For example, I know that other fields are still working towards having this like equity based theories and practices. So I think there's so much space to still so many doors, so many other discussions to be held that people need to really take action. And this comes with the baggage of practice. The is the best teacher, is the best way of learning. Go ahead. Loyola has the motto, the and this little thing that an Ignatius of Loyola used to say, and I loved it. Go out and set the world on fire. Which it said, I'm not saying it, but it's period of let's set the world on fire because we need some movement. We need some action.
Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I'll have 3 finish the statement prompts. So I'll say, finish the statement, and then I'll say the thing, and then whatever comes to your mind at the time. It's just what you're thinking of in this snapshot of time. If I were to ask you week, 2 weeks, a month, even a year from now, your responses might be different, but it's just about what comes to your mind in the moment. True social justice is possible when
When there's dialogue,
my approach to social justice is shaped by.
I'm gonna be really saggy on this, but it's shaped by love, truly.
Understanding and sharing our social justice origin stories is important because
I think you feel less lonely. Yeah, feel like you belong to the people who are doing this work.
for our final question, I always share that I hope that your storytelling, the storytelling of the collective of other folks who are contributing to this project, I hope the stories stay around for many years to come, beyond our time, to be quite honest. And for future generations who may come across this recording in some time, somehow, is there anything you'd like to pass on to them? Is there any knowledge, wisdom, things that you might want them to know? What would you say to future generations who might come across this recording?
Well, I have nieces, little girls that are growing up to be beautiful, amazing women, and I feel like if I need to tell them something is to follow your innate sense of justice, because that's what truly got me here. That feeling of there's something that needs to be made better, needs to be made more just in the society. And sometimes we doubt that so much, that innate sense of justice that we have. And I feel like future generations, even when you're in doubt, follow that, and that will get you to the right place.
Emily, sometimes as I'm doing these, I don't know right away in terms of how it's going to work out. After I do the editing and stuff, the title ends up working its way through at the end, and I'll say what the title is going to be. But I believe that was so powerful how you said that. It was brief, but it was as I'm experiencing I'm listening into it. It was brief, but it held so much. And I really just wanted to say, I really love that piece
Powerful.
of advice. Follow your innate sense of justice. I feel in a lot of ways it touches the core of one of the messages that I would like this project to communicate to people. And so I'm just so honored and appreciative of you coming to share. And I'll tell you what, that may actually end up being the title of this one. Follow your innate sense of justice. And of course, I'll put your name in there too. But wow, what a thing. What a message to share, to land on, to end on. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you for opening this space. Truly an amazing initiative, and I am hoping that it grows and you can nurture it how you like it, and how it's evolving to be a space for people to community.
Yeah. 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 Emely Medina-Rodríguez. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and subscribe to Social Justice Origin Stories there or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch video episodes on YouTube at Social Justice Origin Stories, and I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe there as well. Video episodes are also available on the project website, socialjusticeoriginstories.com. I'd love to hear about how you're engaging with the stories. Share your thoughts at socialjusticeoriginstories.com/contact or by emailing stories@socialjusticeoriginstories.com. To support the work of Social Justice Origin Stories, consider becoming a monthly patron. Your contributions will help keep this resource going and support its mission. Visit patreon.com/socialjusticeoriginstories to learn more and to make a contribution. Again, that's patreon.com/socialjusticeoriginstories. You can start or stop anytime. Social Justice Origin Stories is edited, hosted, and produced by me, Rolando Tompkins Jones. Many thanks to our storyteller this week and the many storytellers who have contributed to this project. And thank you for joining me this week. Take care.